straight into it. So thanks everyone for your patience. So this is an introduction to Captivate. I'm going to take you through an end-to-end process in the hour that we've got, and we'll try and dive as deep as possible without getting too caught up in a particular feature or a particular focus, because we've only got an hour, and I really wanted to take you through, I guess, my process around getting a project up and running. So I'm going to just start sharing straight away, and hopefully you can see what I've got up on the screen. Now, this obviously is the Captivate 2017 splash screen, and I just quickly wanted to show you the options that you've got available up here. So of course, the recent button will show you what you've recently had open. The new button will allow you to create a new project. But just quickly, I want to jump you into this other little button up in the top right hand corner, which sort of is sitting over on the side there. It may not be as noticeable, or you might not have seen it or thought about it, but that takes you into a couple of sample projects that they've got in there. And I've actually got one open already, because they can take a little while to open. And I'm just going to open up this picture perfect simulation sample, which I've actually got open already, which is this one. Now, the first thing that I would like to bring to your attention with regards to this particular project, now this comes with the software, and it's a really good project to explore and get some ideas on not only how they have designed the learning, but there's some good technical things going on here as well, which I will talk about. Just quickly, I wanted to bring to your attention along the top here of the screen, along the top of the slide view, we have what's called the breakpoint view. Now, this breakpoint view has been inherited from a previous version of Captivate. So we're currently in version 2017, which is version 10. If you do open up a Captivate file that has already been created, and you get this particular breakpoint view appearing along the top, that's actually telling you that this project was created in version 9, the previous version of Captivate. So the file will retain the settings. Now, this breakpoint view is talking about what this project will look like in different devices, and the whole concept and the whole idea of responsive learning. You may have come across that term before. Responsive learning is a module or an experience, an online experience that responds accordingly to the size, according to the size of the device. So, for example, if we were to show this device through a mobile screen, whatever is appearing between the two triangles along the top here, that will be displayed in the mobile view, and anything outside, so over to the right here, will not be displayed. The tablet view is showing you how this project will look in a tablet, and desktop will show you how it looks in desktop. When we create a brand new project in 2017, or the current version of Captivate, we do actually have a different type of breakpoint view. In actual fact, we have what's called a slider. So I wanted to bring that to your attention straight away, because it can be a little bit confusing, because one moment you might see a slider along the top, and then if you open up a project that's been created in a previous version of Captivate, you will see a different set of options available up here. Now, what I like to do in situations like this, if I've opened up an existing file that someone else has created, I like to go in and preview it straight away. Now, when you're creating your own projects, it's a really good idea to preview more often than not, because previewing allows you to test functionality, and it allows you to test sort of what you've done sort of previously, and any navigation issues or any interaction issues will pop up in the preview. So when we go into preview, or we click on the preview button, we've got a few options here. We've got an option to play just this slide. Now what that does is that just plays the timeline within the edit view. And you'll notice that this playhead sort of plays along. You can actually go down to your timeline down the bottom here, and you've got a red play bar which allows you to see how that slide will be built based on the objects that you've got there. And you can actually drag these panels up and down, and you'll see this particular slide does have quite a few objects on there. So you can really see how that's being built. So that particular preview option, which is play this slide, and you can also achieve exactly the same outcome. There's a little play button just down the bottom of your timeline, which will do the same thing. Now, what happens with this is that if you do have any interactions or buttons, they won't actually work. So for example, you might have a button that stops halfway through the slide. This particular type of preview, when you preview or just play the slide, it will just play to the end regardless of what's in there. So you don't really get a true picture of the interactivity, but at least you get a bit of an idea as to timing. So you can do quick little previews just to test some object or object introductions and timing of objects as they appear on the slide. Okay, a couple of other preview options here. Of course, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and just actually look at this preview project option. Now what that will do is that will open up the project in a web browser, and I will just preview this project. We've just got a question from Jonathan there. My timeline won't descend. How can I get rid of it? That's a good question, Jonathan. I will get to that answer just in a moment, because while it's generating, you can't actually do anything. You just got to wait till it generates. But when you do, when the preview has been generated in your browser, that will open up your default browser. And a couple of things that I want to point out here is that if you look up in the browser web address, you'll see it says localhost :2381 blah blah blah, and then there's a big number at the end. Now this is a generated preview based on how your project looks at this particular point in time. Now here's just a little bit of a tip or a word of warning. Say for example, I'll keep this browser window open in the background. Now say for example I was to go back and just change something or change something on the screen. So I can go into here and say this is picture perfect. So I've just added some words. Going back to the current generated preview and refreshing it won't actually pick up those changes. So because it's still looking at a preview set in time for when you actually press the preview button. Good question, Kaz. To be completely honest with you, Captivate can be a little bit memory intensive. And if you are talking about as you're working or editing in your program, probably and I'll get back to you in a moment, Jonathan. What you can try and do, Kaz, is if you go into Edit and then Preferences, And then it might be worthwhile actually clearing the cache. There's a project cache option here, and you can clear the cache, and depending on the way your computer's set up, then that can help. And potentially what I also like to do is actually give my Windows machine, if you're on Windows, a bit of a cleanup as well, because I can delete files that might be clogging up the cache and so forth. So try and give that a go if you can. 16 gig of RAMs is pretty good. But yeah, try and clear the cache if you can. That's a bit of a tip for everybody. Try and clear that cache if you can. Going back to Jonathan's question, my timeline won't descend. If you hover your mouse just above the word timeline and below that scroll bar, you should get a double-headed arrow, and you can drag that down. It will only go down to a certain point. It won't drag all the way to the bottom. But here's a little tip. What you can do is if you hover your mouse just over the word timeline and double click, and that will collapse the panel. So that can help to just get rid of the timeline, and you can just double click on the word timeline again, and that will pop the timeline panel back up. Or if you go through the window menu and you can tick timeline, and you'll see that you going through the window menu and taking the tick off timeline will completely remove that panel. So the only way you can really get it back is by going into window timeline, or there's a shortcut key right there, Control-Alt-T. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Jonathan. So a couple of other things that I just wanted to bring to your attention. So you've got your preview. So if you do make any changes, it's a good idea to re-preview the change to get a true reflection of those new changes that you have made. And it can take a little while to generate the preview, especially if you've got a lot of slides and a lot of images and things like that. And I'll get to a couple of traps and tricks with previewing when we go in and create our new project now. But I'll just quickly show you how that change that I've just put in. You don't have to save the file to get the preview to reflect those changes. That preview will bring up those new words straight away. So there you go. You'll see up here we've got this breakpoint view, so that shows you what the project will look like on a mobile, on a tablet, and on a desktop. But this changes if it's a brand new project created in 2017, and we're going to have a look at that right now. So I do recommend that you go in and explore existing projects. This is a really good one just to get some ideas on learning experience design in general. So I'm going to close that down, and I'm actually going to close that down as well. So creating a brand new project from scratch. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these in detail. We'll do some upcoming webinars and look at these particular situations, or focus on these particular situations. And I'm not going to create a blank project. I'm actually going to create a responsive project and talk about why in a moment. But essentially, a responsive project is a blank project with some extra functionality and design features ready to go if you decide to go down the mobile or tablet path. If you create a blank project, then you don't have those responsive features or tools readily available. So we're going to create a responsive project, and I'll show you a couple of tips when dealing with responsive projects. So just quickly, responsive page size. So what this basically does, and we've just created a brand new responsive project, and what I'd like to draw to your attention straight away is that you'll see along the top here we've got a completely different set of options available. And this is a big leap from the previous version, and the reason being is this. First of all, we've got some pre-defined device sizes already built in, And where it's different from the previous version is not only do we get the width of the device, but we also get the height of the device. So for example, stock standard desktop here is 1024 by 627. But if I go into iPhone, for example, that's the device size of the iPhone. And for those of you who have potentially worked in the previous version of Captivate and tried to create a responsive project, you had to build the project sort of 3 times for each breakpoint, whereas here, or in this version, it's a lot quicker because things are taken care of. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about responsiveness and fluid boxes at the moment because I want to sort of start back at the beginning. But a couple of things I just wanted to bring to your attention. When you create a responsive project, the very first slide has what's called a fluid box. And I actually want to get rid of the fluid boxes for a moment because I just want to focus on some fundamentals. But here's a problem that you might find. First of all, how do I know that there's a fluid box? Well, that's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked. First of all, if you click somewhere on the slide, you'll see that I've got an object here that's already in there, and over in my properties panel, and this properties panel will display properties for the current selected objects. So the properties panel will change depending on what you've got selected. And to point out here that you've got this option for this selected object that says unlock from fluid box. So something's telling me that, okay, there's got to be a fluid box in there. How do I select the fluid box? Well, here's another tip for you. Don't tell anyone, but I'm going to give this one to you for free. There's a really painless way of selecting fluid boxes. And what we do here is we click anywhere outside the slide. You click and drag like you're creating a lasso and just come over the edge of the slide like so. And then when you let go, you'll now notice that I've got this fluid box selected. Now if you try and select it another way by clicking on the edge, you'll notice that you can, if I hover my mouse over, I do get the fluid box appearing. But depending on what's going on the slide, it can be a little bit difficult to actually click on the fluid box. But just a quick little tip or a surefire way of selecting the fluid box, you'll see that I can actually select it that way. Good question. I haven't used that particular wireframer, Ewan, so but I've used other prototyping tools, and they work in a similar fashion where things will fluidly adjust according to the frames, the device size. Okay, another trap, and I'm just talking about a quick trap here. So there is this option, and if I don't have anything selected on the slide, my properties panel over here will display properties related to the slide. By the way, if you don't have your properties panel appearing, you can once again go through the Windows menu and select properties, and that will display the properties panel for the selected object, or the properties for the slide if you've got nothing selected. Now here's a trap. You might want to get rid of the fluid boxes because you're not ready for them yet, and you click on this button. There's a button over here that says remove fluid boxes, and you click on it, and lo and behold, I've still got my fluid box there. So what's happening? Is it broken? Is it not working? Do I have to reboot? No, you don't. Here's the thing. The remove fluid boxes option will only work on slides that you have put the fluid boxes in yourself. Now this particular slide is based on what's called a master slide. And for those of you who have used PowerPoint, you may have come across master slides before. And master slides sit in the background or behind the slide and define any layout or define any pre-existing objects that might appear when you create a new slide based on a particular master slide. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I'm just going to close this down and do this again just to show you. As soon as you create a responsive project, Captivate automatically gives you this blank slide with a fluid box that you can't actually get rid of. And I don't want to look at fluid boxes too much at the moment because I want to go back. So what I'm actually going to do here, and what I can do is I can actually go in and change the layout. It's very similar to PowerPoint. And what this does, these pre-existing layouts that come with the software are very good, and they're a good way to keep or to get you started and to hit the ground running. But the problem is they're very limited in the way that you can get in there and actually modify them and change them and so forth. So I'll give you another example. I don't want you to get frustrated using Captivate, so I'm trying to get you through a few of the traps. So for example, if I go and select another another slide master, because I'm just interested to see what's going on, I can go and click on this content one, for example, and straight away the screen changes, but now it's like, okay, well, what's the fluid box layout? And once again, I can do my little tip to select the fluid boxes, and now I do actually have a couple of extra fluid boxes. Theoretically, we can delete fluid boxes. Yes, it is being recorded, Barbara. You can delete fluid boxes, but once again, you can only delete them if you've actually created them yourself. So if I try and delete this fluid box, I've got it selected, and I press delete, then nothing's happening. That's because when you create a slide based on one of the master slides, it's very limited or restricted in what you can do with the fluid boxes. So you can't actually delete them. So I'm going to show you a trick on what to do. So what you could do is you could actually just select blank out of the master layout, and you'll notice straight away that remove fluid boxes button has disappeared. And if I try my tip on selecting fluid boxes, nothing is happening. So I've got a clean canvas, and I'm a lot more comfortable in just building stuff from scratch without things happening randomly or automatically when I actually didn't want them to happen. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here, and time flies when you're having fun, is that by all means create a new project based on the responsive project layout. You may not be ready to apply responsive features and functionality, but once you get more comfortable with the fluid boxes, and that's the terminology, then you can apply that functionality over the top of your existing projects. Thank you, Alex. I will repeat that. To delete the fluid box that Captivate gives you as part of the slide master, the quickest way to do it is to go into the slide properties and go into the blank slide. Select blank, and that removes the fluid box. Jonathan, very good question. I will get to that, but what I wanted to do is I just wanted to draw your attention to getting rid of the fluid box. I'm going to step back a little bit. Fluid boxes will come shortly, but I just wanted to get some objects on the screen to start off with and just talk about some fundamental concepts, and then we can apply the fluid boxes over the top. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to start from scratch, and I wanted to really pinpoint some of the traps that you can fall into, especially for young players. So first of all, I'm going to insert an image. and the image is going to be a logo. Okay, so straight away I'm going to insert an image, and here we go. So here's my image, and of course a couple of things that we can do with images. We can of course resize them. Unfortunately, if I just resize it just freely using using one of the resizing handles, it can cause my image to be elongated or warped. And for those of you who work with big companies, it's a no-no to warp the company logo. If you do find you've accidentally done that, or you've opened up a project where the image has been warped, we do have an option under Image Properties. So select the image first, either on the slide or using the timeline layer down the bottom, and I'll get to that in a moment. And we've got a really cool button over here that says Reset to Original Size. I'm just going to click that button to reset, and that'll bring me back to the original size of the image. So that's a quick way to reset the image to the original size. I can resize the image, keeping it in proportion. So here's another really cool tip. I'll give this one to you for free. Don't tell anyone. We're going to hover the mouse over the corner of the image, and before I click and drag to resize it, I'm going to hold the Shift key down on the keyboard. That's the Shift key down on the keyboard, and now as I resize it, you'll notice that it's keeping the image in proportion to the original size, so it's not warping the image. That same shortcut key or tip works in things like PowerPoint and other programs where you can work with images. Okay, so I can move this around. I'm going to worry about fine tuning it in a moment. Now, I'm going to resize a. I'm going to insert another image now. I'm going to put a nice background to the slide. So let's insert another image. So we just go up into the media button up here. There's a media button up the top, and I click on image. You'll see there's a shortcut key there, Shift Control M. These shortcut keys do pop up as you hover your mouse over the features. If a shortcut key doesn't pop up, it means there actually isn't a shortcut key for it. So I'm just going to click on image, or I could have done Shift Control M. And I'm going to select another image, and this is quite a large image. And lo and behold, this big image has come in, and it's completely covered the slide. Now, a couple of things I want to point out here. First of all, the other image has disappeared, and some of you are probably already guessing that the previous image that we had in there has now gone behind the new image. So there is a layering concept in Captivate, like there is in other programs like PowerPoint. We can very quickly change the layering or the order of the images by using the timeline down the bottom here. So as we start to add new images, or add any object for that matter, then brand new objects will automatically appear at the top of the stacking order. And we can very easily change the order of these, or the stacking order of these objects, by clicking on the timeline layer, holding your left mouse button down, and just dragging up and down to change the order of those objects. So that's a quick little tip there. Another thing that's happened here is this image, this new image that we brought in, is a lot larger than the stage or the slide. So here's a pretty neat feature which I like to use quite regularly. I will select the image, and there's a button over here under the image properties called Fit to Stage. And when you click that button, you'll notice that the image proportionally resizes to fit within the boundaries of the stage. And then of course we could quite easily just resize that just to be as big as the stage, like so. And there's a couple of other little things that we could do, or you might even actually want it quite big. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's a pretty cool feature there. So here's a question from Ewan. Good question. In answer to your question, let me think about that. You can't create a mask in the true sense of the word of creating a mask like you can in more higher end image editing programs. But quickly, can I just try something here? So what I could do here is, group object and make a layer. I'll try something, just thinking off the bat here. We do have a way of actually getting rid of this white background. This is quite a cool feature. We've got this option here over on the right here, which allows us to select a blank or select a transparent color. So if I click on this button here, when you hover your mouse over the top of it, nothing really appears. So it's not really obvious straight away what this particular button does. But it's to create a transparent color. So if I click on this button and then I click the eyedropper and then I select the white part of this image, and you'll notice that it actually gets rid of the white. I still get a little bit of a mask. Some of you may have seen that before. Now what I could do, yes, it's, a GIF would probably work better, a flat GIF of about 8-bit GIF. But what I could do here, if I'm in a bit of a hurry and I just want to try something else, I could actually try one of these shadow options. So there's a shadow option here. I could make the blur really sharp, like 1. I could put the shadow in the middle. I could change the opacity to 100. I'm just sort of making this up as I go along here, so bear with me for a minute. And then you do actually have an option. Where is it? There used to be an option. I'll have to find it. You've put me on the spot here, where you can actually just show the shadow only. So leave that with me. I'm going to. I'll come back to you on that, Ewan. But very good question, Gretel. Can we flag that question, please? And I'm going to get back to Ewan and the community with some way. It'd be good to have Captivate be able to do that for us. But yeah, you're right. Probably a GIF image would have been better to do that. So I'm just going to pop that down there, or I might even actually put in a white glow. So there you go. That looks a bit better. Okay. So moving along, now, believe it or not, I have actually done a storyboard on how I wanted this project to work out. So I have done some planning and storyboarding, and I've worked with subject matter experts, and I've worked with a learning designer, and I've got a high level storyboard to show you what we're going to create and how I would approach this particular learning piece. Now, the thing that I want to show you is that we've got a couple of pages. We've got a title page. We're going to have a welcome page to welcome people. We're going to open up our learning experience with an opening question, and we're going to get people to choose a response to a question. And depending on which response they select, they're going to visit one slide, or they're going to visit another slide. So we're going to have a question with 2 responses. Depending on where they click, they go on down a different path. Now that concept is known as branching. Okay, that's called branching. And in actual fact, Captivate has a special view which I'll show you when we get some branching in there, and it's called the branching view. And that can be a really good way to see, it basically represents this type of view, but within Captivate. So once you've got those branching scenarios happening, we'll be able to view that in Captivate. Then from each of those slides, we go back to a summary slide to talk about, okay, thanks for your feedback. Then we're going to put in a quiz question we're going to have quiz results, and we're going to thank them and put in, say, a hyperlink to a intranet link or something like that. And we're going to do this in 23 minutes. The Pepsi challenge has been laid down. And the reason that I wanted to show you this path is because, first of all, it talks about branching. We're going to put some buttons in there that allow us to go to different slides. And then, of course, you can expand on this concept and make this as big as you like, but the foundations will be laid. So hopefully you're all ready for this. Seatbelts on, and let's go. So the first thing that we're going to do is, we've done the first slide. Now, a couple of really good habits to get into, because this will help you further down the track. First habit is, we've got these objects already in here. I'd like you to get into the habit of naming your objects as they appear within the project. Now, I'm not talking about the file name. I'm talking about the name of the object as it's represented in the project itself. So, for example, this particular object, what's the file name? Well, we can go to the library to have a look, and here's another tip. Just remember this tip. This is an awesome tip, especially if you've got lots of assets and lots of images and you want to quickly find where that asset or that image is in the library. Now, we haven't really seen the library, but we're going to jump you in the deep end, or throw you in the deep end with the library. Try this for a tip. Are you ready? Right mouse click on the image, and we've got this option, Find in Library. Now, this is one of my favorite tools or features within Captivate, because what this does is it immediately goes to the library and it's got the item selected. And we can have a look, and you'll see that that's actually the name of the file. It's not a very good file name, but that's my fault. Try not to get into the habit of naming your files randomly like that. We can change the name of the asset as it appears in Captivate. What I'm just about to do won't change the file name back in Windows Explorer. That's finished with. So there's still a file in my folder in Windows or the Mac that's we just created a copy, brought it into Captivate, and now that's what it's called, clipboard such and such. So we can right mouse click on the asset in the library, and we can select rename, and I'm just going to call this logo. We don't need a file name on the end. I'm just going to call it logo. Couple of things. First of all, I've changed the name of the asset in the library, so it's going to make it easier to see my assets as that list grows. But it hasn't actually changed. Well, there you go. It has. It's updated the name of the layer in the timeline. But here's the thing, which I was getting to shortly. The instance of that asset on the stage at that particular point in time has a different name altogether. And I'll point this out here. While I've got this image selected, it's called logo because I just changed the name of it, but the name of the instance of that asset on the slide is called image 1. So you'll see up here it's called image 1, and also to the left here it's called image 1. Now, when we want to go and control that image or that object further down the track with things like advanced actions and things like that, Captivate refers to that object by its instance name on the slide, because you control the instance. We're not controlling the library asset. Okay, so just quickly I'll show you something. I'm just going to insert a new blank slide. If I go into the library and drag this asset back over into the slide, you'll now notice that the same asset has a brand new instance name. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Good question. Good question. So JAWS will read the instance name as it appears on the slide, and that's a good question. we'll be doing, we've got a webinar planned for accessibility. So thanks for your question, Ewan. So just be mindful of that. Get into the habit early. You don't want to be going back through a project that you've created with lots of things already in there and start naming everything. Get into the habit early and name your instances. Okay, 18 minutes to go. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to rename this instance. And I'm going to call it IMG for image underscore logo underscore 01. Now, there's no rule for this. The reason I like to do this is because IMG stands for the fact that it's an image. Logo is obviously logo, and 01 refers to slide 1. So I know it's an image of the logo on slide 1. Why would I need to put those types of references in there? That's a really good question. I'm quickly going to show you something. I'm just going to jump well and truly into the deep end here. But if I go, say I wanted to create an advanced action that controls the display of this image, if I go in here, and we're going to do another webinar on advanced action shortly, but say I say show, and then in here, you'll see that the reference to that instance just comes up with a name. So if I had just called it logo 1 or something else, there's I want to know that there's an image. So that list is ultimately displayed in alphabetical order. So I know if I hit the letter I, then all of the images will appear. So you can start to filter out the list based on what you type in. Or I can even type in logo as well, and that will display as well. So I just wanted to, there's a bit of a method to my madness. So that's the reason why it's a good idea to get into the habit early. Okay, now we might want to display this slide for a particular length of time or introduce these objects. So for example, I'm going to actually put some text in now, and I can use a shape. So I'm just going to put in a rectangle shape, and when you select shape, your mouse turns into a hairline cross. I can click and drag to create a shape here. And a little bit of a lag. I've got 32 gig of RAM. You'll notice it took a while for it to draw. That's Captivate for you. I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about that. Another shortcut key, if I want to add text, I can either double click, or shortcut key of the hour is if you hit the F2 key, the function 2. So if you hit F2 key on the keyboard, that's edit text for shapes. Okay, so hitting the F2 key on the keyboard. So I'm just going to type in welcome, and what I can do here, by default, that's the default shape color for shapes as you put them in. I'm going to change the opacity to 0. You'll notice I've now got a completely different set of properties here as well, because it's a shape. And I'm going to change the font size to a little bit bigger. And I want to center the shape smack bang in the middle of the slide. So using my align toolbar up the top here, if you don't have that visible window align, by default I don't think it's visible unless you turn it on. So window align, very similar to the align features in PowerPoint. So select your shape or your text box there, and you've got this option, center horizontally on the slide. Now the cool thing about this is that button is pressed in, so it's locked in. So if I want to move that up and down, say I move it, just drag it, see I'm actually dragging it over to the left, and it's not actually going anywhere, and it's constantly going to be in the middle horizontally. So that setting is locked in, and I can actually just click on that button again to take that off, and then that gives me a little bit more flexibility as to where that object is shown. So that's a good one. Center horizontally. If you are trying to move an object around and it's stuck in the middle, chances are that button is pressed in. Okay, now what we're going to do also, all these habits to get into, which are really good habits. Name your shapes. So I'm actually going to call this one SS welcome 01. So it's the welcome SS for smart shape. You may see other people, I've seen that pop up around the place, but you can call it anything you like as long as you know what you're talking about. What we're also going to do here is I'm going to create what's called a style. For those of you who have used Microsoft Word, then styles work in a very similar fashion. And I'm just going to show you something. I'm just going to quickly go to the next slide, and I'm going to insert another shape, and you'll notice that it comes up with the fill, and I don't want to have to keep changing it to 0%, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do, and I'll just delete this, I'll go back to the previous shape that I put in, and it looks like it's got a bit of a stroke around the outside, which is okay. I might leave that in there. And I'm actually going to do what's called create a brand new style. So in the properties panel for the shape, just over on the right hand side, there's a tiny little options menu. So if I click on this options menu, and I'm going to create a brand new style. So I click on new style, and I'm going to call this text white stroke 2, for example. So I know that it's the text is white and it's got an outline stroke 2. So I click on OK, and you'll now notice that style name pops up there. Now the style has captured everything from the fill to the opacity to the font size and the stroke. Now if I change this font size to 72, you'll now notice that I've got a plus sign here, which means that that style, the properties of that style has changed, so I can actually update the underlying style with the new setting or the new font size by going back and clicking on that options button, save changes to existing style, and any other shape that has that style attached to it will be updated with the new setting. So I click on OK, and the plus sign will disappear. So think about applying styles as you can. Okay, we'll get back to timing in a moment. I just want to go in here. We're going to go in, and I'm going to put in a, I might actually skip this slide here. We're going to go to the opening question. The opening question is, who makes Adobe, oh, I didn't hit F2. There you go. Why didn't anyone, Gretel, you should help. I'm going to hit the F2 key. Who makes Adobe Captivate? Good question. And I'm going to center that. I'm going to put in a couple of other buttons over here. A couple of other buttons. Or they're actually shapes, and what we can do is we can actually make shapes buttons. Now the way we do this is we select the shape, and under the properties of the shape we've got use as button. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, but what we're going to do is I'm actually going to create a brand new style here. Now I can't create a brand new style because I haven't made any changes to this style. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the fill color. Might make that blue. Stroke, outline stroke like that. Hit the F2 key. I'm just going to type in Adobe, and I'm going to change the font color to dark, so I just might need to scroll down to find extra properties. And now you'll notice that the plus sign has appeared next to default smart shape, and I can create a new style. So if this menu's grayed out, it means you actually haven't made changes to that default shape. So I'm going to create a new style here, and I'm going to call this standard button. You can have spaces in your style names, so click on OK. And now I'm going to select this other shape over here, and straight away I can go to my style drop down menu. I can select standard button, and you'll notice that it does update with all of those all of that formatting. And I just need to click on Use As Button because we're going to invite people to click on those buttons to go somewhere. Hit the F2 key to edit the text. I don't know. Okay. Now, I want to get a working prototype finished because I've got 8 minutes. So I'm going to get a working prototype finished, and then we can fine-tune things with some of the tips that we've learned. Okay, to insert a brand new blank slide, shortcut key, because time's running out, the deadline, and I've got the boss looking over my shoulder. So shortcut key to insert a new slide, Control-Shift-J, brand new slide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into the habit now of naming my slide. So while I've got the slide here, slide properties up in the top right hand corner, I'm going to just type Adobe because that's the name of the response. And I'm going to actually insert another blank slide, Control-Shift-J, and I'm going to call this I don't know. Now, where I've got up to is I've done the opening question, feedback 1, feedback 2. So these are the 2 slides that I've created. And I'm now going to put in another slide, Control-Shift-J, and I'm going to call this one summary, or did I call it summary feed? Summary is fine. Okay. You'll notice that the slide names appear over here. Why have I put slide names in? Good question. So, a couple of reasons. First of all, with this particular button, we want people to, when they click on that button, they're going to land on this slide. So, I select the button, and because I've used the shape as a button, I'm going to now apply an action. So if I click on Actions, and on the success of clicking on that button, I want to jump to a particular slide. There's lots of actions in there, and we'll explore those in future webinars. We want to jump to a particular slide. My list of slides appear, but when I click on this drop-down menu, you'll now notice the slide names that I've put in there have appeared, so it makes it a lot easier for me to then say, well, I actually want the slide called Adobe, and believe me, when you've got lots and lots and lots of slides there and you've got lots of branching happening, it's a lot easier to reference the name. Okay, and I don't know, if I click on that, I'm going to jump to a slide called I don't know. Now I'm going to go back to Adobe. The Adobe slide. I'm just going to put in some text there. Well done. You know your stuff. And then I'm going to go, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select this shape. I'm going to copy it. And I'm just going to go to the next slide. I'm going to paste it. And then I'm going to say, more training you require. So now I'm up to here, and of course, here's the thing: we get to slide 3. We're not going to put any interactions on slide 3. We want people to automatically, so the slide will display for 3 seconds. How do I know that? Good question. So in the timeline, you'll see down here, and I can make that a little bit bigger, you'll see there that it actually displays for 3 seconds. So if I play that, it'll play for 3 seconds. I might want it to display for 4 seconds. So what I can do is I can hover my mouse over the end of the slide layer, at the end of the actual layer that represents the slide, and I can drag that out to 4 seconds. And what I can do with the layer that represents the object, I can right mouse click on it, and I can show for rest of slide. So that will automatically appear for the rest of the slide. Now, I'm not going to invite people to click on a button to then move on. I want people to automatically go to the summary slide. So what I can do here is I can actually assign an action to the slide itself. So have a look at this. This is quite interesting. Just like we assigned an action to these buttons, we can also assign an action what happens when people reach the end of the slide. So under the slide properties, we've got an actions area. So I'm going to click on actions, and on exit, where do I want to direct people? Good question. I'm going to select jump to slide, and I want them to jump to the summary slide. So in actual fact, they're going to leapfrog over I don't know onto slide 5. I'm going to go to slide 5. I'm just actually going to copy this text box. I'm going to go to summary, and I'm going to say summary here, click here when ready for quiz, because we're going to do a quiz. Okay, let's test this and see what happens. Are you ready for testing? How do we test it? Good question. We're going to preview. So I'm going to click on the preview button up the top, and I'm going to click preview the whole project. The thing I'd like you to notice here, I'm just going to pause this quickly, just go back to the beginning, is that we have a completely different responsive slider from the previous example that we had, because this shows us what this file will look like in a device, and it does it all fluidly as opposed to just having 3 breakpoints. Okay, let's see what happens here. We're going to just play this automatically. Welcome. Great. Goes on to the question, who makes Adobe Captivate? If I click on Adobe, well done, you know your stuff. On slide exit, it should jump to the summary. So it's leapfrogged that slide. So that's great. That's what we want to do. Excellent. Now, a couple of things to point out. Normally in online experiences, we when we hover over a link or something that we invite people to click on, our mouse turns into a hand. So this is a bit of a default setting, which is a really good idea to be mindful of. We want our mouse pointer to change to a hand, and by default there's always this click sound, so we're going to disable the click sound as well. The way we do this, while the shape is selected, we go back into the actions, and this will only be applicable if the shape's being used as a button. And you'll see here we're going to select hand cursor and disable click sound. Now the thing is, if we had decided, okay, we want to do this for all of the shapes that we've got in there that are buttons, we'd have to go into each one individually. And you'll notice that as I go on to the next one, I've got to do the hand cursor and disable click sound. But if I've used my styles, I can now apply this setting that I've made to all items of the same style. So if I had 20 shapes in there where I wanted to display the hand cursor and disable the click sound, all I need to do is go into one shape where I've made those changes, go to my options menu just near the word display and others, choose apply to all items of the same style, and that's using the style name that I had up here. And lo and behold, if I now go and click on that shape, which is now a button, those settings have been applied. So styles are very, very powerful, especially when you want to start applying settings to similar types of shapes and objects. So that's really cool. So be mindful of that. Okay, time's up, but I'm going to keep going, so feel free to stay. I'm just going to quickly do a quiz. The way we do that is we go through quiz and question slide, multiple choice. There are lots of other different types of questions there. I'm going to put in a question. Who makes Captivate? And the answer here is, you just have to double click a few times, Adobe, and here I can put Google, for example. Now with the correct answer, if you don't have the quiz panel appearing straight away, you can display window and then quiz properties, and that will allow you to add extra functionality to your quiz. But to select the correct answer, all you need to do is actually go onto the slide itself and click on the little radio button to define which is the correct answer. So Adobe in this case, by default, when you add a quiz, you automatically, good question, Jonathan, I'll bring that back up again. You automatically get quiz results, which is a good thing. And we'll be continuing this in a future webinar very shortly. But to answer your question, Jonathan, if you go into the quiz menu up the top, you've got question slide, and you've got a range of different types of questions here. And I just selected multiple choice and then clicked on OK. And we'll be doing some webinars around different question types as well. Last but not least, if we've got our quiz results here, and then once again inserting a brand new slide, Control-Shift-J, shortcut key of the day, and then I'm going to insert a rectangle. Good question, Kaz. If you're uploading this to a learning management system, the learning management system, people need to log into a learning management system, and this learning interaction and these quiz results will be automatically associated with the user's login of the learning management system. So hopefully that's answered your question. There are other ways of doing this, and we can talk about that offline as well, and we'll be doing some webinars around that as well. Click here for more information, and what we can do here, which is pretty cool, this shape, which I can use as a button. I'm actually going to apply my standard button style. I'm going to use as a button, and what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to link to an external web page. So I've actually got our YouTube channel open anyway. So here all I did there is I just copied the URL from the browser window by right mouse clicking and copy, and then what I'm going to do here, while I've got the shape selected, use as button, action on success, I want to open URL or file, and a little field appears directly underneath it. I'm going to click in that field. I can either right mouse click and paste, or I can just do Control V or Command V to put that URL in there. I'm going to press enter, and here's a little tip for you as well. If you are linking to external websites outside of your learning experience, I can't recommend enough. There is this option next to the URL. This is probably the most important tip of today. Click on the little arrow, and you've got the option to open that web page in a new tab or a new window. So that leaves the existing window open in the background, and it will open up the external web page in a brand new browser window or brand new browser tab. So let's test that, shall we? Once again, also making sure that this button is displaying a hand cursor and disabling click sound, and of course apply to all items of the same style will only work retrospectively to existing objects in your project. It doesn't apply to new objects where that style is actually applied. So just be mindful, you might have to update that with new objects that you add. Okay, let's test. Sorry we've gone over time, but it's very exciting. I could talk all day about this. So preview project, quick little test. Let's see how this works. Welcome. Good question, Matthew. We can definitely cover that in the next webinar. So who makes Adobe Captivate? I don't know. more training you require. And this slide will then go on to the next slide. Click here when you're ready for the quiz. I didn't put that action in, but I'm sure you all know how to do that. I'm going to click on Google, get that wrong, incorrect, click enter to continue. That takes me to the quiz results. I could review the quiz, but if I continue, I then go on to the next slide, click here for more information. I click, and you'll now notice that that web page opens up in a new tab. So my learning experience is still in the background, so I could continue on if I wanted to. So much to share with you. I think we're going to get another webinar up and running very, very shortly. So in the next couple of weeks, I reckon. So I'd really like to continue on from where we left off. And SCORM is actually a whole subject on its own. Thank you, Alex. And Ewan, thanks for the feedback on that. And yes, SCORM Cloud, that's absolutely correct. Just a quick word of warning. This project, or the default, by default, projects aren't ready to upload to an LMS straight away. Very quickly, this is probably the most important thing for today. If you do want to upload this to an LMS, we need to go into the quiz menu and quiz preferences, and we need to enable reporting for this project. If you don't have this button ticked and then you upload it to an LMS, there's no glue, or there's no communication between the module and the LMS. And we'll definitely pick up on these settings. You will need to configure. The LMS settings, such as identifier, etc. And LMSs do work a little bit differently. So probably a good idea to check with your vendor, your LMS vendor, to make sure that there are specific fields that do need to be filled out. But please enable reporting for this project. Double check configure. Most of you will probably be using SCORM 1.2, and I'm happy to run anyone through some settings if you have an immediate need to make sure you get this right. So just get in touch. I'm happy to spend some time over the phone with you if you want to quickly explore this for any projects that you might have. So look, it's 12:10. My tummy's rumbling. I don't know about yours, but look, really happy to take calls and help with some specific needs and requirements. We do have a course coming up in the Adobe head office in Sydney on the 22nd and the 23rd of February. So please keep an eye out on our various channels and our website as well, where you can find out more information. Give us a call, send us an email. You've got our contact details, and I'm happy to talk through any immediate issues that you may have. And I'm happy to stay online and answer some questions now as well, if you do, or if you just want me to run through anything with you. So sorry, it was a little bit rushed at the end there, but hopefully we've covered a few things that have helped you get on your way. And please keep in touch, and I'm going to hang around here and answer any questions. So Alex, really good question. If you took the course, one-on-one support lasts forever. That's my gift to you, my promise to you. Yes, that's right. I'm actually not going anywhere. I love working here. Great team, doing what I love. So I'm happy to help out. And look, and I'm happy to give some one-on-one advice and just have a friendly chat, even before the course, or even if you don't do the course. So feel free to get in touch anytime. Any other questions?